arrive. First, though, our top stories this evening, and crisis talks have been held in Zimbabwe, where President Robert Mugabe remains under house arrest as his main rival calls for him to step down. 20 people involved with the top London theatre, where Kevin Spacey was artistic director for more than a decade, have made allegations of inappropriate behaviour against him. A 49-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder by police investigating the disappearance of missing teenager Gaia Pope. Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines this evening with the chief lead writer at The Observer, Sonia Sodha, and the political journalist Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome to both of you, good to see you. So let's take a look, shall we, at the front pages, and the Eye to start with reports on the Prime Minister's promise to tackle the country's housing crisis by building more homes and giving assistance to young buyers. The Community Secretary, Sajid Javid, has blamed the housing shortage on so-called selfish baby boomers who oppose development plans and live in another world. That's the front of the Metro. Same story for the Daily Mail. As you can see, Mr. Javid's attack on mortgage-free over 60s for the housing crisis as he calls for billions to build new homes in next week's budget. A London theatre has admitted the cult of personality surrounding the actor Kevin Spacey could have stopped staff raising concerns of inappropriate behaviour after receiving 20 separate allegations. That's the lead for The Guardian. The Daily Mirror features claims that Hollywood actor Sylvester Stallone and his bodyguard sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl in the 1980s, allegations that the star's spokeswoman has tonight called ridiculous and false. A number of senior legal figures are calling for reforms to outdated divorce laws to modernise and protect marriage. That's on the front of the Times. On the Telegraph's front page, the number of drivers evading car tax has trebled after the government's decision to scrap paper tax discs on vehicles, according to new figures. While the Financial Times reports on demands from Saudi authorities that businessmen and princes held over corruption allegations hand over billions of their wealth in exchange for their freedom. The Sun says foreign aid is being used to farm coconuts in the Caribbean and yoga therapy in India. Drinking 3 cups of coffee a day reduces your risk of liver cancer. That's the lead story for The Express. And The Star reports on efforts to boost ratings in the forthcoming series of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So Isabel Oakeshott, Sonia Sodha here with their thoughts. And you want to start on divorce laws? Old-fashioned, in need of reform? What's your view?
Indeed, and it was quite a surprise, really, to see this on the front of the Times, because it looks as if it's a story that could have really gone in the paper at any point, and there's so much other news going on, but they've chosen to place a story on the front today. It looks as if it's going to be a new Times campaign, and the gist of it is that they're arguing, and they've got a number of legal figures to back up their claims, that divorce laws are really antiquated now, and the emphasis on proving fault and blame in the courts, according to their argument, is very harmful for the ongoing, particularly where a couple has children. It isn't really conducive to the most amicable separation and going your separate ways as possible. I think they've probably got a reasonable point.
Even for quickie divorces, you still have to show somebody's done something.
Well, in fact, if you need, what this report sort of implies is that if you want a quickie divorce, you have to show blame. And actually, if you're going for a divorce where somebody isn't accepting blame or alleging blame, you have to wait longer, up to 5 years if one partner is contesting the divorce. So there's a real incentive, if you want a quickie divorce, to lay the blame at someone's door. And it just strikes me as a really old-fashioned system. It doesn't recognise the modern nature of relationships. Sometimes relationships that you commit to for life irrevocably
I didn't try and use that word.
Break down, and that is just the reality, and it's no one's fault, and you would like to part amicably.
It's not your night
It's
tonight.
just not my night.
Do you know what? The happy news is maybe this means Sonia will talk a bit less this evening. Over to me.
But I think it's been a long time coming. There's also a couple of other reforms that that the legal grandees that the Times refers to are pushing. So first of all, the end of kind of lifetime maintenance awards that can see people being awarded some very large sums on a sort of continual basis for life. And I think, again, in the modern world, absolutely, if someone gives up their career to bring up children, then they should get an award, particularly if there are children involved. But if there aren't children involved, I think there are questions to be asked. And then thirdly, a statutory backing for prenuptial contracts. And we know prenuptial contracts are becoming much more common, but actually their legal standing is quite questionable. So you might sign up to a prenup, but the court might actually ignore it in a divorce. And I think these are all quite modern reforms, actually. People are meeting later, bringing very different assets to a relationship. They might want to protect those assets, and I think that's fair enough.
I mean, politically, is this difficult? The Conservative Party, for example, has always tried to be seen to be encouraging the family and therefore marriage.
And normally that would be the viewpoint that I would come from. But actually in this case, I think the Times has got this right. I think it does feel very old-fashioned. And there is a point at which actually by modernising divorce laws, you will protect marriage in that people won't feel so utterly afraid of entering into it in the first place. If they feel that it's going to be impossible to get out of. I mean, actually, the Times has an extraordinary case about a lady who's been trapped in a marriage where she has been trying to get a divorce and, their relationship has broken down, but the husband is resisting, and this seems to have dragged on for absolutely years, and the judge won't grant it, saying that the things that the wife isn't happy about, she just basically needs to sort of, put up with it.
But where do you end on this? I mean, I've got a friend, admittedly unmarried, who suggests that really what we need to do is enter into contracts for 5 years or 10 years. You take your pick.
Perfect.
Okay, right.
We just have like a short-term thing.
Throw out marriage as a sort of a lifelong commitment and make it sort of.
This could be the.
Let's see how we get on.
Of course, people want to make lifelong commitments to each other, and you hope they're going to last. But anyone who's been in a long-term relationship knows
there aren't that many animals that do. Let's be fair.
So do you think after the 5 years, can you just get out of it, or you could renew it or something?
You can.
So you renew your. Well, people do renew their vows, don't they? But I mean, I think what this case shows, again, sort of what the legal experts are arguing, is that because the divorce laws are so antiquated, it puts a lot of power in the hands of judges. And if you've got quite an old-fashioned judge, and this judge, this woman produced a list of, I think, sort of 30 things that the husband had done, which showed that the marriage was loveless, that she was trapped in it, and the judge said, well, these are just minor altercations you should expect in any marriage. And it's a bit like, well, why should a judge, an old-fashioned judge, be able to impose his personal preferences about what marriage is on other people who are seeking divorce? It just doesn't seem right.
Interesting. Okay, let's move actually to another double-page spread, I think. No, we'll get to the Telegraph first of all. So, obviously, we've had the newspapers this week about the mutineers, and it looks like the person who will blink first is in fact Theresa May.
Theresa May, yeah.
Right?
I mean, we Sonia and I always sort of slightly groan at the thought of yet another Brexit discussion, and this is all
keep it brief.
About. We will keep it brief. In a nutshell, it looks like May is going to have to cave in to her. Well, you're not very good at keeping it brief. We know that. She's going to have to cave in because there is a mounting revolt over the positioning in new legislation on Brexit over putting a concrete date on when we're leaving, which is something I'd be thoroughly in favour of, but we all know that Sonia isn't. Look at her face. Go on.
No, well, I'm not, because it sort of writes into Britain leaving the European Union even more inflexibility. It weakens our negotiating hand. If we don't get to a really good deal, the sort of deal that we want, just before we're about to leave, we could just be exiting with no deal. And if the European Union knows that, then it puts us in a weaker negotiating position.
I just don't accept MPs that I think you've got that wrong. But that is the way that negotiations. The wrong way round.
No, Isabel, if we have to leave, if in law on a certain date there's absolutely no flexibility or leeway, the European Union knows that it can just absolutely drag its feet and then offer us whatever deal it wants, really.
But if we don't have to leave by a given date, they can do precisely the same. I think we just need to be bold enough to set the date. Otherwise, we'll just string it along forever. And people who don't want to leave will have a great agenda in stringing it out. I completely
agree with MPs like Dominic Grieve, who say this is just absolutely nutty from a negotiating strategy perspective. I think it's interesting that the Telegraph have sort of entitled that story. They've put mutineers in inverted commas.
Yeah.
And, there was a very controversial front page earlier this week where...
front page of the Times. I went inside to show Theresa May.
Yeah,
we'll come to that.
We'll come back to it. Yeah, absolutely. But were we getting up that great picture of
of her laughing. But there, maybe yes, climb down on Brexit aid. You're saying that it's good that the Telegraph puts the story back on its front page because it took a lot of stick about the 15 MPs. That
and quite rightly too. And I just think it was a bit chilling, the front page that they did. You know, with the picture
MPs
of every
be accountable,
MP.
Though. Sonia, there's no secret about how MPs vote.
I know, but
so
calling them mutineers and sticking the
they were.
picture. Why do you need a photo of all 15 MPs?
Why don't you need a photo? Why shouldn't you have a photo? What's private about their photo? Everybody knows who they are. They should then vote.
It's really chilling. It looks like a lineup. It looks like an invitation to target these people.
Oh,
the implication of the story.
That's ridiculous.
It was a really weird front page. And then I was just commenting on the fact that they've put mutineers, which obviously they feel like they coined the term mutineers in inverted commas on their front page.
In the meantime, you did like that photograph we saw of Theresa May out pushing housing today. Interesting. I mean, the suggestion might be that she's trying to publicly twist Philip Hammond's arm to commit more money.
We were much more
housing,
taken just with the mood of that picture because, you know, so much speculation in recent days and weeks at Westminster of just how long Theresa May is going to last. And, you know, you constantly hear that she's a broken woman, she can't do anything. And actually, that's a very unusually natural picture of the Prime Minister.
It's the best photo I've ever
looking
seen
properly
of her,
happy.
actually.
But look at her fuddy-duddy shoes. What's going on there?
They've
this is the woman that normally
she needs to be able to walk
fancy
around.
shoes. I don't know, look like slippers to me.
I just think that's the best, one of the best pictures I've ever seen of her because she's just not known for posing naturally, for showing her human side, and I think that's a really great shot.
We'll come back to the housing shortly, but I know you wanted to do whatever is happening with Mugabe. Front page of the Telegraph now has a photograph, some of the photographs that were released of him with the man effectively trying to oust him, head of the army. So question mark, what is going on? Is this just a means of actually getting the deal done so that he gets safe passage effectively out of the country?
Appears to be, yeah. I mean, remarkably, he looks so incredibly robust, doesn't he, for someone who is so old. And I was reading about the life expectancy in Zimbabwe, which was something like 59 when he was born, and is now 58. And there he is in his 90s, still clinging on. But the speculation appears to be that he may be ready now to step down, having given a set of conditions that involve him having immunity and being given safe housing or whatever it is he has negotiated. So maybe finally the country will be rid of this tyrant, but the question is whether whoever replaces him is going to be any better.
Well, indeed that, yeah.
Indeed, and I think there are real question marks over that. So there's an obvious successor, the Vice President that he sacked a couple of weeks ago that sort of precipitated this whole, the military coup. But I think a lot of Zimbabweans will sort of be looking on anxiously. I suspect many of them will think, well, hopefully it can't get worse than it's been in Zimbabwe over the last sort of 10, 20 years or so. But it does seem that this has been a long time coming from the perspective of people who live there, and now it looks inevitable, really.
Yeah, oldest world leader, I think, isn't he? So, as you say, 93.
Is he really? Wow.
Still to come, then, we will talk about those baby boomers. Sajid Javid saying, not in my backyard, homeowners, you know who you are, I suppose, are to blame for keeping young people off the property ladder. Discussing that in just a moment.